Broncos country, retry. The firing of head coach Nathaniel Hackett after a 4-11 start was a bit surprising to me, even though it was justified. Personally, I thought he would end the season in Denver as there would be no harm. The season was already lost and we were eliminated from the playoffs. But maybe the reason for getting an interim head coach is to build some momentum going into next season. But I do specifically remember that someone wasn't completely on the train on the hiring of Nathaniel Hackett. Done with having first-time coordinators having their first head coaching gigs with the Broncos. Welcome to this episode of Game Time Sloth, and today we will be discussing the head coaching vacancy for the Denver Broncos and debating who would be the perfect fit to be the Broncos locker room leader next season. I'm gonna start this video with a bit of hypocrisy. My first head coaching candidate for the Broncos would be Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen. Even though he's doing an amazing job with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, and he did a superb job with Justin Herbert and the Chargers, he is still 37 years of age, and he does not have any head coaching experience. So I don't think the Broncos would be pursuing him to be their head coach in the offseason. A candidate that's highly likely to be the new Broncos head coach is ex-Colts head coach Frank Reich. Frank Reich was a former quarterback in the NFL and he is an offensive-minded head coach. He was also a former quarterback in the NFL, so he knows how to develop the position and he knows how to play the position. So he would be a major asset to add with Russell Wilson and maybe try to fix that situation. Reich boasted a 40-win, 33-loss, and 1-tie record with the Colts, which is why the Broncos should not maybe consider him as a head coach because he had a lot of weapons to deal with, and that loss at the end of the season to the Jaguars was unforgivable. Maybe he is not the right coach for the position, but the Broncos aren't a good situation to begin with. It's not a head coaching dream job right now, and I don't see a lot of head coaches lining up to be the new Broncos head coach. So maybe it's Reich. The next candidate for the Broncos head coaching gig would be Steelers linebackers coach Brian Flores. Flores spent over a decade with the New England Patriots and is of the Bill Belichick coaching tree. He did an impeccable job with the Miami Dolphins, boasting a record of 24 wins, 25 losses, merely at 500. Why would Brian Flores be a good head coaching candidate for the Broncos, even though he attempted to sue them at the beginning of the season? The answer is simple: strengthen your strengths. Flores is a defensive-minded head coach, and he can take control of the locker room. The focal point of the Broncos team ever since Peyton Manning retired was their defense. So might as well hire a defensive-minded head coach, and that would leave the offensive coordinator job open. So I don't care who you hire at that position. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I take that back. I do not want to see Pat Shurmur again in Denver. Do not hire anyone at the offensive coordinator position. And while we're on the subject, do not, I repeat again, Broncos country, do not hire Eric Bieniemy as your offensive coordinator. We do not want to be giving Kansas City extra draft picks. With the new minority head coaching GM rule that's being implemented in the NFL the past 2 seasons, the last thing we need is giving Kansas City more draft picks. And while we're on the subject of strengthening your strengths, another candidate that I was really high on last offseason to be the Broncos' new head coach, current Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator Dan Quinn, also a defensive-minded head coach. The only difference between Dan Quinn and Brian Flores is that Dan Quinn is already an established head coach in the NFL and he led the Falcons to a Super Bowl. Did I say that before? Personally, I was more on board with the hiring of Dan Quinn, simply because he's an established head coach and he led the Falcons to a Super Bowl before. Honorable mentions: Yeah, I know honorable mentions should be done between number one and number two, but hey, this is my video, I'm doing it the way I want. The honorable mention goes to none other than Peyton Manning. No one can read a defense better than Peyton Manning can. He would be an amazing offensive coordinator and even a better head coach. Remember our game against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football? At least we don't have to worry about Peyton not managing the clock. And Peyton also resides in Denver, and he has strong ties with the Broncos organization. But why would he consider going back to the NFL? He's having so much fun in his retirement with the Manning cast on Monday nights, Peyton's places. He doesn't seem like he wants to be on the field anymore. Peyton, if you're by any chance watching this video, even though it's highly unlikely, if you get the call from the Broncos, at least consider it. At number two, we have Michigan State head coach Jim Harbaugh. Like Frank Reich, Jim was also a quarterback in the NFL. And remember about 10 years ago when he led the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance? He could probably do the same thing for Denver. Now you might think, hey, Jim Harbaugh just signed an extension with Michigan State. What you might not know is that that contract left the window open for an NFL return for Harbaugh. The buyout on his contract for this season is just $3 million. That's pocket change for our new ownership group. We can possibly get Harbaugh in the offseason. And the most anticlimactic reveal at number one is head coach Sean Payton, arguably the biggest offseason signing next year. Almost all of the teams in the NFL are after Sean Payton, and it's highly unlikely that he would go to the Broncos. The Broncos are a mess. The rumors are not linking him to the Broncos. He might return to the Saints. But let's break that down. Let's see why he should go back to the Broncos and why he shouldn't go to the Broncos. First of all, let's compare Russell Wilson and Drew Brees. They're about the same size for the quarterback position, and they both have huge arms to throw the football. Sean Payton did miracles with a broken Drew Brees in New Orleans. He could give it a shot and attempt to fix Russell Wilson and the Broncos offense. Now, in order to do that, the Broncos are one piece away. Well, they are an entire offensive line away, and this specific piece, the Swiss Army knife of offense in the NFL, Taysom Hill. The Broncos could trade a third-round pick for Taysom Hill and get him along with Sean Payton if that happens. And that's one of the issues the Broncos have on offense. Whenever the ball is snapped, you know where Jerry Jeudy's going, you know where Cortland Sutton is going, and you know where Javonte Williams is going. Funny, I should mention him. Doesn't he remind you of Alvin Kamara a few years ago with his power run? So, what I'm basically saying here, the offense could be similar to what Peyton ran in New Orleans. We just want to get Taysom Hill from the Saints. One of the other reasons why Sean Payton should consider going to Denver, he is assembling an all-star head coaching staff. And he just assigned former Broncos head coach Vic Fangio as his defensive coordinator. Now, would Vic really want to come back to the Broncos after he was fired? Well, maybe not. But then again, let's also remember that Vic Fangio built that Broncos defense and he knows how to manage it. So it would be a perfect fit. Now, the Broncos are a mess, and Sean Payton would not risk his legacy going there and trying to fix the atrocious offense. But let's keep one thing in mind. If this idiot can give John Gruden a 10-year, $100 million contract, then the richest ownership group in the league can offer the same thing for Sean Payton. And everyone has a price. So even if you think that Sean Payton's not going to Denver, he will be interviewed in Denver. And you'll never know what type of contract he will get. Possibly a 10-year, $120 million contract. Everyone has a price. Who do you think would be the Broncos' next head coach? Put that down in the comments below.